guys, welcome to the Workshop Recorder. My name's Scott, and glad you joined me today. Not really doing much right now. To be honest with you, I'm actually waiting on some shipments of various things to complete some projects. I've got some pigments coming in so I can complete my my little Gaz Model AA truck. I'm almost there. I've got everything done except for the rear view mirrors and a few of the details that need to go on there. But I'm gonna need some new pigment to dust up the bottom of that and finish off the weathering. I've been working on my little in-scale building here. Let me show you what I've been doing on this. It's not glued to the base, but I've added some what is that? A chain link fence and a gate down there to the thing. I've got to paint that chain link fence up. But this is coming along all right. I weathered the roof, and I think that's in its own video. But I've been working on that as well. That's just a little project to help me practice some weathering and to be a kind of a filler project when I'm in between projects. I've also been doing a lot of figures for a diorama I plan on working on, and have been painting these guys up in some basic, putting down some basic colors, some primer basic colors. And I've been enjoying those. I've got the Precer figures. These cats right here are going to be my workers working with my Gaz truck. Now they're much bigger actually than a 1/35th scale guy provided by, look at the difference in the scale of these fellas, provided by Mini Art. This is from one of Mini Art's civilian sets, and it is, these guys are definitely not the same size. They could go together. The worker guy would be a big guy, but it's really apparent when you take the fella who's bending over from a Mini Art delivery van set. He's much smaller, and he's visibly a small dude. In terms of these figures, the Mini Art figures aren't so bad. They're actually pretty nice. I have the civilian set that includes this young lady. I know you can't see these very well, but they're never as pretty. The women are never as pretty as they are on the box art. She's got a big nose. And I was really interested in this old lady who's kind of aghast at things going on. This old lady is going to be part of this, an idea that I have. The idea keeps morphing and changing, so who knows what I'm going to end up doing with these guys. But I've been painting them, getting them ready to practice my painting skills. I'm not really that good at it, and I want to get better. And so I've been watching a lot of videos on YouTube and learning how to paint. Can't decide if I want to keep going with these model colors or use model color as a base and go back to oil painting, which I'm actually familiar with, and feel a little more confident that I can pull off a good figure. So yeah, that's what I've been doing with those lately. I've got a couple other little projects underway that are just kind of on the side projects to fill in while I'm waiting on stuff to come in. But I also want to talk about something that comes up, at least I think about it a lot, and I think it's a good way to improve your models, especially for diorama builders, and it has to do with bases. Pardon me. And bases and general aesthetics. The first thing that just surprises me is when guys make their own decals and make their own custom schemes for aircraft and various things, is they'll painstakingly research colors, and they'll make sure they have the right colors and the accurate colors and accurate weathering, and they'll make sure that their model is accurate to scale drawings, but then they'll go and slap on there the wrong font. I have seen models that have fonts on them that weren't even designed at the time. If you're designing say a cafe scene for your 1/35th scale staff car, or truck, or tank, or something in Paris or Germany or somewhere, and you put Helvetica on there, it's wrong. It's just wrong. It's laughable, and you've made a mistake that is absolutely laughable because Helvetica wasn't even designed back then. It might kind of look like a sans serif font that you might find on a road sign or on a cafe door or something. But take a look at German road signs, for example. That's a very particular font, and it was designed specifically for that use. And if you're going to make your own road signs, you need to track down something that more closely follows that font. And there are tools on the internet. You can upload images, and it'll try to help you to identify fonts. But for the most part, don't put Helvetica on World War II stuff. It wasn't designed till the 50s. Likewise, brush script. If you're using brush script on anything that's not, in the reference photo, then that's an awful font. That was a linotype font from the 60s and 70s, and it's not fancy. Brush script, Zapf dingbats, none of these, Zapf chancery, Old English script, none of these are fancy. None of these are tasteful fonts in the font world, at least. And people who use them on their stuff are missing an opportunity to be a little more authentic by just researching some fonts and finding some things that were actually designed and existent in the time in which you did them. Also, here's a picture. Look at this F102. I think it's a 102. I'm saying this before I go and look at the picture. But it says U.S. Air Force on the side, which is accurate, but that's not the right font. You can actually download the font the Air Force used on the side of their aircraft, and it's free, and you can use that, so there's no excuse. So pay attention to fonts. If you're going to labor to get colors right, you should labor to get all the details right, such as your insignias and fonts. Also, composition. Basic composition can help you out a lot. Basic composition on dioramas especially. I got some thoughts about. So let me get my notebook and my sketchbook and show you some thoughts on that. All right, so let me show you some of what I mean here. Find a fresh page. All right, so whenever you're laying out a composition, especially like a diorama, we're prone to take the base, like a rectangular base, and let's say we just put our tank or our truck right in the middle. That's geometry right there, geometric, and in a lot of people's minds, well, that's nice because it all fits. But that's static and dead. In composition, what you want to do at the very base is to violate these borders, because if you have these rectangular hard borders and you put a rectangular vehicle right there in the middle, you're reinforcing these borders and drawing attention to them, implying that, well, that's all there is to your scene. Well, if you put your tank at an angle and slightly offset, then you're implying that this is just a slice of a bigger life, of a larger sphere. So you've got this line here, the axes of the tank are offset, and normally about a 30-60, if you put a old school 30-60 triangle in there, that's usually considered kind of the classic. But you want to violate your edges. You also want to violate your borders. Let me show you what else you can do. Let's say you're doing a circular base, and you want to put a figure in there, and this is a small base. Well, you put your figure right there in the middle with his head there and standing there. That's boring. If you have a circular base, you want to put your figure kind of off to the side and add some other element that transects it, like a rail line or a curb, or a curb with a grate. But put things at an angle. So we're looking down on the shoulders of a figure. This is the shoulders, little epaulets there. This is the guy's head, and there's his feet sticking out down there. So his shoulders form a line here. Your curb down here, or pipe or rail or whatever, what have you, or color demarcation or grass, say it's just the edge of some grass, forms another line. And you've got two elements here, a little, I'm considering that like a street sewer drain plate. And, it gives you a better, interesting composition. But if you've got this guy just standing in the middle of a circle, he's right in the middle, his feet are right there, and that's boring, that's dull and lifeless. So you can bring a little bit of visual dynamics to your compositions by offsetting and by employing lines of motion lines. There's another way you can do that with a diorama. Let's say, like what I'm about to embark on is a street scene that has a trolley on it. Now, the trolley base that comes with the the mini art European trolley, it looks like could have been a good useful base, but the trolley line goes right across a square like that, aligned with the edges. And that's boring to me. What can I do with that? All I can do is put a background there and put a trolley here in the middle. That's dull. What would be better, and I think I've seen this in some other bases where they have rails, is a trolley line next to a street corner. Say that's a curb, this is sidewalk. I can put a building facade here. But if my trolley line was at an angle, that's a little more interesting. That gives me some room out here to put some park benches and some figures and some shrubbery and a trolley cart here, and you could do more with it. You can tell more of a story. And so composition is important in making dioramas. Composition is also important when you have numbers of things and sizes of things. Let's say you've got a tank here, and you put your tank on your diorama in a nice compelling way, but you want to add some more scene, some visual scene stuff. Let's say this is a tank kind of headed this direction. So you've already got visual lines indicating motion this way, or at least direction. You've got purpose going on. All right. And if I put, say the edge of a burned out building, I can put that edge of the burned out building across this backside and track along with that tank, and that's fine. That's a natural thing to do. But how much better if you put the corner of a building there so that you have a little bit more interest, and you're implying directional lines this way too, as if there's a street there. And so if you think about putting edges in your dioramas, corners, and think about the negative space, that's the space between your elements, that tells a story too. And so having just a single corner instead of a flat-faced facade here implies that there's more of a scene going on. It also gives you more opportunities to tuck little bits of story in, like little guy hiding back here. You could do all kinds of things with it. So think about these lines of, they call them all different things. I just call them direction lines. They direct your attention, and they imply motion, or they imply a dynamic that you don't get if you just plop your tank down in the middle of a base. So that's a little bit about composition. Violate your borders, violate the geometry. Never use pairs. Always try to use odd-numbered collections of things unless there's a compelling reason. Unless you've got a whole squad of soldiers, for example, and in that particular military, a squad was a certain even number of guys, that might make sense. But if you're going to pose some figures, it's generally best to use odd numbers. That's just a compositional reality, that if I had two soldiers walking along here, that's kind of boring. But if I put a third one over here, all of a sudden I have some visual references going on that aren't just static. Two guys standing there can imply rhythm. Visual rhythm is a real thing. It's a psychology thing. But if I put one over here, now I've got some more interesting things going on. And my guys actually form another kind of interesting line of reference that your brain subconsciously makes and says, there's something going on. There's three guys kind of randomly working in conjunction with this tank. There's probably some other guys around too, spread out. So you could do things with odd numbers that help to break up a scene's staticness. Static meaning stillness, deadness. And I really like when I see a well-composed diorama, and I don't see them very often when people make their own. I see them, sold this way. Some of the mini art diorama bases that they make with the vacuum-formed structures are actually pretty nicely done. But then again, sometimes you see guys make dioramas that are a board with a square building, with a square truck, lined up with the edge, with a single figure, or figures all in a cluster all over here. And so what you have is this big blocky thing here. You've got your big blocky thing here, and these guys form a big blocky thing over here, and you've got all this dead space, and there's nothing really going on. When you could spread your guys out a little more, angle things a bit, and tell a better story. So anyway, that's a little bit about composition. I would suggest that if you're into diorama building, that you study a bit of basic composition, especially for composition for artists and guys who lay stuff out, guys who do painting. These are ways that you can get into some basic compositional ideas that will help your photography, help your art, help your drawing, help your garden layout, help your furniture design in your house, and help your dioramas. Here's another thing I see. I see guys do their little base, a rectangular base. They put a truck in there, or a tank, or what have you. And they've got a few soldiers standing here, and they have this vast, vast base with nothing going on. So if we look top down on this base, you've got this base, it's got grass and trees and shrubs, and it's got a truck in it right there, and a few guys. Well, you've got all this space out here that's not really, it's not really impacting your story. It's not telling any of the story, and it's just all this big open space with a little truck in it. It makes it hard to view this, and it draws away from it doesn't invite the viewer to come and look at your handiwork. And so, a situation like this, I would put a truck on a small base and imply bushes, imply rubble, put your characters there, and that intimate base draws you into inspect what's going on here, and people see all your handiwork. Another thing, let's take this one. Let me turn around so you can see it. This is a base. We're looking kind of down at it as if you would at a model show. People might, put a building back here in their on their base for their truck here. But if you're going to have all this space, and you've got a lot of broad space, balance that out with building upward. Build a taller structure here, and don't build it just to build it. Have it telling a story. Have this being a church tower with a guy up here, yelling out saying, "Hey, look out over that way," pointing off or whatever. And these guys out here, pausing, waiting for him to do his recon. Tell a story with your bases, and then balance this big broad area out here with some trees over here. So what you've got going on is a visual scene that has this open space, which is kind of horizontal, and you've got your vehicle implying that it's traveling this direction. But you've also got this vertical space going on here, which gives you some interest, some visual interest. And then you've also got a circle of interest over here in this foliage. And so you've got some interesting compositional things going on. It's not a static scene. It forms a triangle. It forms a good, nice, balanced composition. And so when you learn some composition, you can craft some nice scenes that aren't just deadpan squares with lots of open space and lots of bad composition. So study some composition. All right, well, I'm no expert on a lot of this stuff. I'm just a modeler like you are, but I do have some aesthetics training, and I like to talk about aesthetics, and I like to try to help folks understand it a little better. And I hope that that's been helpful. Maybe I've missed something. Maybe I am missing something big. Why don't you leave me a comment? I appreciate all your input and your insights, and I thank you for joining me on Workshop Recorder, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.